This is to make, we've talked a couple of times about what I expect while your classmates are giving a speech. This is to make it explicit. The part I highlighted, if you understand the part I highlighted, you're going to do great. And that is unwelcome noises that are avoidable. There are some unwelcome noises that you can't help. Some people just sneeze loudly and they can't control it. If you sneeze in the middle of someone's speech, I know you can't control that. Don't sweat it. Some noises are welcome. Someone tells a good joke, you should laugh. If someone says something really interesting, you wow or that's fine. That's welcome. If they ask you to say something with them, that's welcome. Anything out of those two categories, if it's not a welcome noise or other distraction and you can avoid it, do. I get militant when your classmates are up here. And I'm going to be a grumpy old man for about 30 seconds. I understand that you're tightly scheduled. I understand that you bring with you snacks and drinks and that sometimes you need a bathroom break in the middle of class because they run you around so much, you don't have time to take care of basic needs. Let me tell you something about life after college, whether it's fair or not. Right after college, they're going to look at you, they're going to see how young you are, and they are very ready to form an impression of you that you're still a kid. And one of the things that changes sharply between college and your first workplace after college, when you come to a meeting, you're expected to be able to sit in that meeting the whole time with no snack and no beverage and no bathroom break. So you don't have to do it in here. I understand when I'm doing the talk and I honestly don't care. But when your classmates are speaking, we've done this a couple of times with impromptus, people will go out to take care of a bathroom break and then they'll walk in the middle of someone's impromptu. And I haven't pointed it out that you shouldn't be doing that, but as of today, don't walk in the middle of someone's impromptu. If you hear them speaking, wait till you hear this, and then walk back in. And when it comes to graded speeches, do not walk in the middle of it. Wait till you hear applause. Okay? Everything else on there is just elaboration. I'm going to go dead silent while you look it over because I want you to ask me questions. Today is a good day for you to ask me questions. So I know the part at the bottom reads a little angry and mean and harsh. Often when you see language like that, there's one student who caused language like that. And I can see the student in my imagination right now just sitting doing their homework, forgetting that I'm sitting behind them with a video camera. And the speech ended, and I said, okay, you were doing your homework, leave. They went straight to the dean, said I made the whole thing up. And so I showed up to the meeting with the dean and showed the video. And then that person, they were on a team. Before I had just tossed them out of class, that was going to be the end of it, but the dean went to their coach. and they didn't play for a while, and at the end of the year, they didn't return. So there's some really good advice. When you find yourself in a hole, don't dig and make it deeper. I put on there that I'm videoing you, not to be mean, but just so it doesn't surprise you, so we can prevent some of these things instead of you learning very unpleasantly. The two more things I'll say, and then I really will open the floor to questions in case you have any. The two things that commonly are a problem about what's described on that document is I will see people and they'll have their phone out and they'll be fiddling on their phone, and I will tell them, quit playing with your phone while a classmate is speaking. And they'll say, I was taking notes on the speech on my phone. You know what? Don't, because we can't see the difference and your classmate can't see. They just see you playing with your phone. So wait. If there's something that was in the speech that could really help you and you really want it, talk to them after. Or, build your listening memory skills. The other thing that's sometimes a problem, you will feel a real urge if you know you're going to give your speech later that day to sit there with your note cards and run through the speech one more time. Put your blasted note cards away because your classmates will see it. And I will periodically remind people, put your note cards away so I don't wonder what you're doing. Those are the two things, playing on your phone or having your note cards out and rehearsing the speech one more time. Okay, who has questions you want to ask me about any of that? Okay. I have about 2 other bits of housekeeping, and then we will get on to the day's topic. One of the bits I think is good news. Module number 2, History of Bushnell, has a new link. It says, this was unpublished and should be unpublished. It says, more Speech 2 contacts. The Advancement Department, which houses the Alumni Association, they put out the word to all the alumni they're in contact with, and a lot of them responded saying, yeah, we would love to talk to students in public speaking and tell them what Bushnell used to be like. I put all these contacts, we have both email and phone for all of them, I put them in order from the most recent graduate back to the ones who graduated the longest time ago. The 2 on the bottom graduated from here the year I was born, and I'm 55. So you could find out what this campus was like more than a half century ago. So if you want to compare the cafeteria, the chapel, whatever it is your topic is, I don't think we had sports back then. We might have had men's basketball. I don't even think we had men's basketball actually back in the mid-60s. But you can get a sharp contrast between today and how things were back then. All right. Today's topic is research. And there are 3 things I want to do. The first 2 you will find very useful. The first one I am hoping will actually make you think that today is a good, cheerful Friday. I'm going to show you how to do your Speech 3 research, in most cases, in about 10 minutes. I highly recommend, when it comes to artificial intelligence platforms, I highly recommend that you not just put your topic into ChatGPT or Claude, but have you played with Perplexity? Perplexity is more of an old school search engine like Google, except it's AI enhanced and it cites its sources. It gives you the link to the source it got the information from. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to do a demo of this. I'm going to turn Pro on. If you don't have a paid account, it'll only let you do like 5 searches a day. But we can do probably, I have 3 that I want to do, and I'll show you how they work. Someone give me, what is your topic and what are the political parties? Anybody? NATO, Okay. Let's see. What is the difference? And here's a trick. Don't do it by the name of the candidates. Do it by the name of the parties. Between the position taken in the 2024 presidential election, and be more specific so it doesn't get confused, United States presidential election by the Republican Party and the Democratic Party on the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and America's membership in it, ? Put that in, boom. and it looks up the Republican Party's position, and it looks up the Democratic Party's position. These little colorful things are the sources, and it will give you the answer, the difference between them. Democratic Party strongly supports it. Here are the bullet points. Ambivalent and critical of NATO. Here are the bullet points. And then here are the key differences. And these little numbered things, those are the sources. Now you can click on those and go directly to the sources, get the information not out of the search engine, get the details behind it, and you can cite your sources correctly. Now that's only the first source, first search I'm going to do. Here's the second one. What reasons does the Republican Party give in support of its position? Boom. It will look those up. It will show you the reasons. Takes just a few seconds. And again, pointing you back to the sources which you can cite. It will give you the reasons why, and that's half of your assignment. And the other half of the assignment, what are the leading criticisms presented by opponents of the Republican Party when they criticize its position? And it'll do the exact same thing. And you can do the same thing for the other party as well. You got all the sources cited, and it'll find it for you. One of the things it is important that you be able to do by the time you graduate, you need to have played with some of these platforms enough. In job interviews, they're already asking, what is your experience with AI? What are your skills with AI? Perplexity is your friend. Play with it. Use it in your other classes. Get used to how it works. That's the first thing I wanted to do. Do you want to ask me any questions about how Perplexity works? Okay. Take it, Zach, please.
Any side questions related to the prompt that you give are connected to search results?
Right. If you ask a follow-up, it looks back to the previous question, and you can just do a shorter follow-up, and it remembers what the question was. Right. And just so I've said it, just so there's no misunderstanding, you really can't get up here when you give any of the research speeches and say, according to ChatGPT. ChatGPT is not a source. You can't say according to Claude. You can't say according to an AI engine. The AI-powered up search engine that points you to published sources, you can cite those. That kind of bridges our way to the second thing that I want to talk about. So you heard the day that I went over all the assignments that in speech 2, you have to cite one source. And in speech 3 and speech 4, those are spoken research papers, which means everything that does not originate with you, you need to cite. So I'm going to take about 5 minutes to explain, and however long we need for you to ask questions, to talk about when do you cite, how do you cite. Because if you remember on speech 3 and speech 4, if something doesn't get cited and it needed to be, the speech flunks for plagiarism. All right. When do you cite? Here are my standards for what must be cited in speech 3 and speech 4. You do not have to cite anything that is your first-hand knowledge. If there's an accident out there on 11th and we watch it, or if you're in here during another class and you see an accident on 11th and you mention it in your speech, you don't have to cite a source for it because you're the source. But if you hear that there's an accident and you get the details from KEZI, then you have to cite KEZI. If it's your first-hand knowledge, meaning you saw it, then you don't have to cite it. Second, common knowledge does not have to be cited. Common knowledge. But here's my standard. If 19 out of 20 people that I pulled off the sidewalk in downtown Eugene would know it off the top of their head, then it's common knowledge. Who was the first president of the United States? You don't need a cite for that. That would pass the 19 out of 20 test. But I had an argument, a friendly, positive argument with a student years ago. Does anyone know how did Franklin Delano Roosevelt die? What did he die of? Anyone know where he died? Anyone know what day he died? A student mentioned all three of those things in her speech, didn't cite any sources, and I flunked it for plagiarism. And she then made a fairly smart argument. She said, that's covered in absolutely every American history class, and every college student graduated high school, so they all had an American history class. And I said, very clever. But you don't have to cite common knowledge because nobody would feel tempted to double check you. By the way, he died of a brain hemorrhage at Warm Springs, Georgia in late July or early August of 1945. I used to know the day. But 19 out of 20 people, like probably the majority of people, do not know that off the top of their head. So that's the kind of thing that even though you think it's in some sense common knowledge, it's not common knowledge for our purposes. The third thing that you do not have to cite is if you have a non-factual illustration. A non-factual illustration. And my example used to be back when music was sold on CDs, on tangible media. If you were to take Taylor Swift's sales and stack them, how many miles high would they be? Well, if you do the math, then you don't have to cite that because you did the math and it's an illustration. And Sean has a question or a comment.
Okay.
Go for it.
On the previous point.
Go for it.
Citing the sources.
Yeah.
So about the Teddy Roosevelt thing.
Yeah.
So she got plagiarism because she didn't cite the sources.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Because she got that information from a published source. She was not there when it happened. She learned it in her American history class. What she needed to do was take just a couple of seconds and find a published source that had that information and cite it. If information is not cited and it didn't originate with you, a lot of the speeches you'll give in your life, you don't have to cite sources. I'm not making you cite sources on speech 1 and only cite one source on speech 2. But you're going to give some presentations in your life where they expect you to cite everything. So you need to know how. So we're going to work on in two speeches in here, we're going to work on how to cite everything. So if something's your non-factual illustration, is what I was talking about, stacking Taylor Swift's non-existent CDs, how tall would they reach? I actually had a student many, many years ago. She was about my age, and she was telling a story during one of the research speeches, and she was practicing it for me before she gave it in class, and she said, now that was the summer when Michael Jackson released Thriller, and it immediately went to number 1, and the first 3 singles were all number 1, and I said, whoa, you have to cite all that. And she said, no, I remember those songs being number 1. And I said, no, you remember hearing on the news that they were number 1. You did not count up his sales and calculate it yourself and conclude that they were number 1. So what we arrived at, because she didn't have time to go and find a source, this is pre-internet, what we arrived at is she didn't need to say the first 3 singles were all number 1. She was able to say, now that's the summer that I bought my copy of Michael Jackson's Thriller, and I remember every time I turned on the radio, they were playing it. You can say all of that, none of that needs citing, because that's all your firsthand experience. So sometimes you don't necessarily need to make a claim that the audience might want to verify independently. Okay? If it's firsthand knowledge, if it's common knowledge, or if it's your non-factual opinion or illustration, then it doesn't need a citation. Everything else needs a citation. I'm going to pause here while you ask me questions. Sean already got us started. Who else has questions? At the moment, oh yeah, thank you, Landon.
If it gets plagiarized, do we get like a 0 in speech?
Okay, plagiarism is an automatic 59, but there are 2 kinds of academic dishonesty. Well, okay, I don't even want to put it that way. There's plagiarism that is academic dishonesty, where it's misconduct and you're trying to fool me and you bought a term paper and you turned it in. That I give to the dean. This, though, we call this substantive plagiarism, which is to say you're in the middle of learning how to cite your sources and you screwed it up. And very often, very many classes across higher ed, if you didn't cite something and it's got to be cited, that's an automatic F on the assignment because it can be a career-ending move, and given particular circumstances, it's even a prosecutable criminal offense to use information in something that's going out to the public where you took intellectual property that does not belong to you. We put an automatic F on it so you treat it like fire and you don't play with it. So that's kind of long-winded. But if you made this kind of mistake, I'm not going to turn you in, you're not going to get kicked out of school, but that speech is an F. Because you can't fool with plagiarism. Charlotte?
What if we accidentally do that? Would we get a chance to fix it and redo our speech?
No. What you can do, bring it to me ahead of time. Yeah, run it for me. I will happily point out to you anything that you didn't cite that needs a citation. Yeah. Allie.
For writing out,
Yeah.
like citing our sources.
Yes, excellent
Do
question.
you want us to do it at like the end, or like we write a sentence and then we cite it?
Love that. Love that question. When you write a term paper, where do you put the citation? At the beginning or the end? In a speech, you do it at the beginning. Because if I say something to you that's absolutely scandalous, that flies in the face of anything you've ever heard before, and you think it's completely wrong and you're tuning it out, and at the end of it I say that it's agreed upon by a consortium of 50 Nobel Prize winners, and you think, oh, well, that's pretty impressive. But you already listened to all the information saying can't be true, can't be true, can't be true. So what we do in a speech, you give people the citation ahead of time so they can gauge how credible the information is before they hear it. Because otherwise, if they can't, they may reject it and only afterward realize, I should have paid attention to that. That was an excellent question. And it made me think of another common... Oh, you know how we've talked before about the 3-word rule and how you don't write out things on your notes that you're going to read word for word? This is an exception to that. You can write the full citation. I'm about to tell you what a full citation is. You can write that on your notes word for word. Now, what I hope is you'll rehearse your speech enough that you're not looking down and just reading it. And if you've rehearsed it a number of times, you can look down, remind yourself, maybe look down twice, but you can still do the citation without having to stand here and read it. If you do have to stand here and read it, it's just going to be you need to rehearse a little more. But you can put citations on. Now, let me tell you, the 3 parts of a citation, and let me stomp my foot a bunch of times over the one that you're going to mess up. Okay, 3 parts to a citation. First, the name of the person, organization, or publication. Person, organization, or publication. That is in order of preference. Person is best. Yes, person, the name of the person, organization, or publication. Squeaky.
So, say you get something off a website and it has an author of that website, you'd rather hear the author of the website?
Yes.
Okay.
You get it off a website and it has the name of the author. We want to hear the name of the author. People respond better to information that's attached to a human name than to the name of an organization. So sometimes the name of the author may not be available. In that case, if it's by the National Rifle Association, if it's by Moms Demand Action, if all you have is the name of the organization, you can cite it that way. And sometimes all you have is the name of the publication. If there was a fender bender out here and you cited KEZI and they didn't put the name of the reporter, you could say, according to KEZI. The important thing is that if you cite only by name of publication, that had better not be anything controversial because that's probably just a wire service report. So the only thing you'd want to cite that for is just to say something happened, not to say that, smoking cures cancer or something like that you'd really have to persuade us. Allie.
What if you're like quoting something, like maybe a quote,
Yeah.
but the author of the quote is unknown?
So, quotes, you remember the day we were in the chapel, we talked through 13 types of support, and one of them was quote/saying. Those don't need, a quote, a well-known quote, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, John F. Kennedy. You don't have to say, according to John F. Kennedy, United States President, in 1961, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. You could just say, John F. Kennedy said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Now, Allie's question was, what if we don't know who said it? Does anyone remember what the difference is between a quote and a saying?
A quote is attached to a person or a name, and a saying
Right.
is something that's said by an unknown person.
Exactly. So, if we don't know who said it, call it a saying and you're good. Label it that on the outline, we're in good shape. Okay, so I said the first part of a citation was the name of the person, organization, or publication. The second, their credentials. Who are they? What is their expertise? What is their affiliation? Are they the CEO of Chase Manhattan Bank and they have a lot of expertise on finance? Are they the person who discovered the vaccine for polio and they have a lot of expertise on public health? What people commonly do, I think it's what some people are taught to do in high school, is they stick the name of the publication there, and we don't need the name of the publication.
So you said credentials or expertise?
Right, credentials, expertise. Expertise is one form of credentials. What I mean by credentials is, why are you citing this person? What do they know about this? Why are we listening to this person's opinion? Is this just someone you yanked in off the street? If so, you're wasting our time. But if they're an expert, then I know why you're quoting them. So tell us what their expertise is. Right. Third and finally, the date. That's the one you're going to mess up. I don't know what, and not all of you, but that's the one that very commonly people are going to mess up. Year after year after year, smart students, hardworking students, they come in here and half their citations, they leave the date off because you say the name, you say their expertise, and to you it feels complete. So my challenge to you, find out what reminder you can put on your notes to where you remember to give us the date. If I told you that there's a disease going around Europe and it wipes out 80% of the population of every city it comes to, would you be afraid? What if I tell you that that disease was from the 1400s and we're talking about the bubonic plague? How recent your evidence is, how recent your research is, matters. It makes a difference. So you got to tell us how recent. Now, how much date information? We have a real simple formula. If it's before 2024, just give us the year. 2023, 2022, anything else? According to Doyle Schrader, professor of communication at Bushnell University in 2023, that is a complete citation. If it's the current year, but not the current month, just give us month and year. According to Doyle Schrader, professor of communication, Bushnell University, in February 2024, that is a complete citation. And I bet you can tell me what the third condition is going to be. Not the current year, just give us the year. Current year, but not the current month, just give us the month and year. What's left? Yeah, if you're in the current month, give us month, day, and year. Brag about how recent it is. If it's October when you're giving this speech, and you've got research published in October, tell us. Was it yesterday? Tell us it was yesterday. Those things strengthen your credibility. All right. Oh, one more detail, and this one more detail is going to be a happy detail. You only have to do that long citation the first time you cite any source. If you cite it a second time, a third time, a fourth time, you can do a short citation consisting just of the name. So if you wanted to cite me in your speech for God only knows what reason, and you wanted to do it a second time, the first time you would say, according to Doyle Schrader, professor of communication at Bushnell University on September 20th, 2024. Then later in the speech you could say, now Schrader goes on to say, and that's all you have to say, just by name. And not even full name, just last name. So if you feel like the citations are going to take over the speech, well, if every bit of research is from a different source, then yeah, you're going to cite a lot. If you reuse any of the sources, then the short citation on second and following citations will shorten it down a lot. Zach?
During the first time that you mentioned cite during a speech, you bring it up completely.
Right.
And then if you bring it up again throughout the speech, you just have to shorten it.
That's right. Shorten it down to, if it's a person, just their last name. If it's an organization, you might say the first time the National Rifle Association, and then later say, now the NRA goes on to say. Sean?
Sort of an outline for this, for the third speech in terms of where to put citation right after the name and stuff.
That's the next thing I was going to say. Sean is hired as my assistant. What do you do as far as putting the citations on the outline? Don't worry about it. Because this is not a term paper, I'm listening for them. They don't have to be on the outline. If there's a source that you cite and it sounds like there's something not quite right, I may email you and say, you cited this source, what's going on with that? This is my question. Doesn't mean you're in trouble, it just means I need to follow up with you and see what it was. But you don't have to put them on the outline because I'm not teaching writing, I'm teaching speaking. Squeaky.
Sorry, you said this already.
I'll say it again.
So if you're citing the same person again, you just say their person, but if they said it at a different date, you have to mention the due date.
Yeah, you can. That's actually an excellent question. Let's say that, because this is actually true, I wrote 3 columns for the Eugene Weekly within the past year. So Doyle Schrader, professor of communication at Bushnell University in January of 2024. Now, Schrader went on to say in July, that's all you need. Mhm. Did you notice, by the way, that the citation was not, according to Doyle Schrader, Eugene Weekly, January 2024? People have this habit of they think they have to stick the publication name in there. But the publication name doesn't tell you anything useful. Okay. That, I think, is everything that I wanted to say about citing sources. Do we have any lingering questions? All right. Then the final thing that I want to take a little time and do, this will take a second to get set up because I'm switching device. For a long time, the day we did research, I would have some tips on how research ought to be done. Now, I haven't given tips on how to do research in a long time until spring of this year, and then today I started showing people Perplexity because it really is very useful. But one of the things that we all need to do responsibly is to help you learn how to separate reliable research from misinformation. So I'm going to give you what I think is probably 10 to 15 minutes. I doubt we're going to have time for any impromptus. I think it's going to take the balance of our time. So a study done about 7 years ago recruited 3 groups of people: undergraduates at Stanford University, professors at Stanford University, and then professional fact checkers. There are 2 organizations with the names, the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American College of Pediatricians. One of them is the professional organization for doctors who practice on children. The other one is a lobbying group. And what they gave, the 3 groups recruited for the study, was a position statement on corporal punishment. And they said, figure out which one's the professional organization and which one's the lobbying group. The Stanford undergraduates and the Stanford professors spent hours. And 20% of the Stanford students picked the right one. 50% of the Stanford professors picked the right one. 100% of the fact checkers got it, and they got it in under 5 minutes. Here was the difference. And I realize it would probably be easier for me to demonstrate this for you if I were on a device where I could switch back and forth quickly. Imagine you've got your web browser open and you're looking at a web page and you don't know whether to believe it. The mistake that the Stanford students and the Stanford professors made was they scrolled up and down it and they read it very carefully, looking for clues as to what was trustworthy and what was misinformation. The fact checkers didn't bother with that. The trick, they say, don't read vertically, read horizontally. They popped open new tabs and they just Googled the names of the 2 organizations and boom, they knew which one was the lobbying group. Don't waste your time with a document or a news source or whatever else, reading it up and down, wondering about it. Instead, start checking out its attributes. Go to fact-checking sites like Snopes. Snopes is very dependable. Take the organization or the name of the publication, put it into Wikipedia. If it's a publication you've never seen before, its Wikipedia entry will say things like, this is a satire site. This is a misinformation site. So don't try to stay in the document and spot it. Get outside the document, and you will find the clues. Were any of you ever taught in high school? Or I know they taught it at Lane for a long time. I used to teach it. The name of it was supposed to be cute. The CRAAP, the CRAB test for whether information was reliable. Is that thing dead yet? Okay, it's good that nobody is finding it familiar. That was a checklist approach. And the checklist approach was, you were supposed to look at whether the information was current, relevant, what was the authority, what was the accuracy, and the purpose. And a number of studies have been done. A guy named Mike Caulfield up at the University of Washington, he trained incoming students on the CRAAP checklist until they could perform it very reliably, and then gave them several misinformation sites, and they didn't catch a single one of them. So he developed a new approach. And the memory trick for the new approach is SIFT, S-I-F-T, SIFT. And this is the SIFT method of not getting fooled by misinformation. First, stop. Do you know and trust the source? If you do know and trust the source, then there may be some additional safeguards to take. But if you don't know and trust the source, follow the next 3 steps. Don't read it, don't share it, and in particular, if you read it and it makes you mad and you think, I knew it, really don't share it at that moment. Because people who author misinformation, they are experts and they make a fortune off knowing what will make the readers, the viewers, the consumers mad. So when you see something online and you think, oh, I got to share this, you're probably being played. And you can be part of the solution instead of part of the problem if you train yourself that when you have an overwhelming urge, you say, I knew it, and you want to share it with everybody, if you stop right then, you are part of the solution. Second part of the approach. This is a creepy visual, but it'll stop after a couple of repeats. The I in SIFT stands for investigate. Investigate. Who is this? This is where you take the name that's on the article and you take the source and you do a Wikipedia search. This is where you do a Google search and you see, is this a source that has been debunked repeatedly? And it did finally stop. I set it to stop after like 3. The third step in the SIFT method is find a trusted source. Find a trusted source. Now, I just put the Bible up there because I think for most people the Bible is a trusted source. But here's an example. What if you got a story today that came up in your feed, and it was from the Save the Koalas Foundation, and it said the koala bear had just become extinct? What source, if you think about it, that you've heard of, that everyone's heard of, that seems pretty credible, what source would report on that? Can you think of any organizations that if the koala just went extinct, they would be reporting on it? Animal Planet. Yeah, I'd look at Animal Planet. I would look National Geographic. Yes, look at those. If they're not mentioning it, then it's probably misinformation, fake news, satire. The T in SIFT is trace the claims, trace the quotes, trace the media. A lot of times misinformation, it will become a story that is reported on by another news source. They report the story, and another news source will report the story, and they each keep repeating one another's coverage. Trace it all the way back. Find out where it originated. Because often, the Eugene Register Guard or Time or Newsweek, they'll cover a story and say that it's gone viral, but really it went viral after a misinformation site put it up and a lot of people shared it. So do the work to find out where the information originated before you decide that it's trustworthy. Yeah, well, disinformation is strategic.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but misinformation is wrong.
Well, they're both wrong. But you're right that disinformation is a term referring to when people put information out because they have something they're trying to achieve. And if there's a site, it's probably fair to say that I need sleep and disinformation is more correct than misinformation. So, point well taken. All right. That is the SIFT method for not getting fooled by misinformation. And now I can put that visual away. I blew through that pretty quickly. We actually do have time for an impromptu, and we might be able to squeeze in 2. Is anyone in the mood? I know it's Friday. I know you want out of here. But I also know there are a finite number of days left. Someone could get their first attempt out of the way, and you might surprise yourself. Or you might get your first attempt out of the way and know how to nail it on your second attempt. Sean, you up? Oh, okay. Cool. Yes. Okay. I have a few half sheets here. There's a half sheet. Whoop. Okay, bear with me just for a second.